Ryan, I know your team. You're just stoked to talk about the Ducks here,
Hey, let's go, Ducks!
as I am as well. All right, I know you got a lot to say. Let me get through. Let me get through my stuff here. Okay, I got four things I want to bring up. It's the double down, right? They're in Vegas.
Double
Dan
down.
Lanning. It's the theme for the year. Double down feels appropriate. Them there in Vegas. Dan Lanning. He was also talking about how there's been a lot of excessive talk about Ohio State and Penn State this year, deservedly so. Ohio State just won the national championship. Penn State is bringing a bunch of players back, and they have a possibility of winning there. Dan said, I don't mind being the silent assassin. Oregon could be the silent assassin this season. I was just talking on that same IMS show. I said, look, if there's a sleeper in the Big Ten this year, it's Oregon. I think they got the best defensive line in the Big Ten. I think they got the best offensive line in the Big Ten. If you have the best duo of the offensive line and defensive line in the Big Ten, that bodes well for you to be able to win this conference. So we'll see if Oregon can do it. Dan Lanning also answered a question about Wisconsin suing Miami for tampering, saying there have to be consequences to those actions. If not, there will be actions like that. Of course, a lot of people believe there's tampering and things like that going on by Oregon, so that got a bunch of uproar online. But one thing I did post, because some people say, oh, Oregon, none of their deals are going to go through or anything. Dan Lanning said at the side podium, he said all of the deals so far that Oregon has submitted, they've been reviewed, and they have all gone through, according to Dan Lanning, which is ought to be really good news for the Duck fans out there. A lot of good fighting back to some of the NIL and stuff like that they like to argue about on Twitter. Ryan, what's your thoughts?
Hey, we're those fighting Ducks, man. We're not just Ducks. We're the fighting Ducks, okay?
Love it. Yeah.
Okay, first and foremost, let's just talk big picture about NIL and just money and all that sort of stuff. You know, Oregon for years was not in the picture at all. You know, when my whole youth growing up, you know, I'm 47. So when I was in high school was the first time they went to the Rose Bowl. My junior year in high school, they went and played Penn State in the Rose Bowl, 1994, 1995 Rose Bowl. And that was the first time we'd ever really even played with the quote unquote big boys. That was the first time we'd even been in the conversation. And, you know, Oregon was kind of like Cal. I mean, we just didn't really give a damn about it, right? And still a good fan base, still love our team, still love our university, you know, a multi-generational Duck, you know, my grandparents, my parents, my son's there now. That's how our field was. We didn't have the bandwagon, though. We didn't have anybody on the bandwagon. We didn't have anybody joining the fan base because Oregon's good. They weren't good. They finally start getting some money pouring in. And you know, it's funny. People talk about Uncle Phil, right? And they should. But Phil Knight is only one part of this process. There's a bunch of donors out here. If you look at all the buildings that they've built, not everyone's Phil Knight. It's not named after Phil. There's a bunch of other donors out here. Now, Phil helped a lot of those other donors start to kick in extra for specifically football. Because again, we're track town. And we've been focused on track. We had a pretty good basketball team through the 80s and 90s. But football, it's a different level of investment. And you have to really kick into gear. So when Bilotti, you know, we lose that Cotton Bowl the year after we went to the Rose Bowl, and Bilotti's first year, Phil says to him in a very famous conversation, hey, what do you need? What classic line. What do you need? And he says, we need an indoor practice facility. Well, Oregon now is building going to be one of the greatest indoor practice facilities we're going to see. The new building that they're building is going to be like the SoFi, like mini SoFi, next to Autzen Stadium. It's going to be absolutely insane. Opaque roof and the whole thing. It's going to be nuts. But this idea that you need to be able to compete with the big boys by just spending an exorbitant amount of money was never really on the books for Oregon. It was never really part of the plan. We're a small school. We're 18, 20,000 kids at the very most. And it's a small school. It's out here in the West Coast. We're very remote out here. We're on the edge of the continent. And you know, we don't really have the same cachet. We don't have the same number of alumni coming through. We don't have the same number of boosters. So all of a sudden now, the old money starts getting mad at the new money when we start coming into the fold, right? We bring in the new jerseys. We have the connection with Nike. The Nike connection is very organic. It started here. We didn't buy our way into a multinational corporation. They were born here. It's exactly the opposite. So the idea is that Oregon is the new money program. They are starting to spend money. Well, now all of a sudden it's NIL, it's transfer portal. And what happens? Surprise, surprise. Oregon does very well. Oregon gets kids who think they can really be developed to get to the next level, which they have. Look at what happened with Bo Nix. Was Bo Nix a first round, second round quarterback coming out of Auburn? Nope. But he was out of Oregon. So everybody want to talk about how Oregon doesn't develop anybody. Oh, they do. They do. That's why people are coming here, people. I'm sorry. But, you have guys who came from USC this last year. We have big recruits came in. Bear Alexander and Mano Pregnon both came in this year from USC. No offense to USC. I got a lot of respect for the Trojans, man. They are the crown jewel of our program for years, the Pac-12. We loved to have USC be the big dog, right? Because they always get the respect. But we also have to compete with them. And so when you start to see guys going from USC to come to Oregon because they feel like they need to be developed at a different level, from our perspective, that's a good sign. And so that kind of shows you where Oregon is in the whole kind of creation of their program. Now, last year, they came into the Big Ten, and they were not necessarily expected to win the whole conference. And what happened? They won it. I was there. It was a great moment. I mean, again, you give Penn State 5 more minutes, they probably win that game. But the point being, they won it. They finally won it at the end. And then what happened? I was in Pasadena. I mean, I still feel like I've got, pain in the lower regions from that first quarter. I mean, that was literally the biggest punch you could have under the belt. I could feel. I was like, what the hell happened here? But Oregon needs to use what happened in that Rose Bowl to propel them in this offseason, which they did. They were that close. And who did they lose to? The national champion, the best team in the country. You're either losing to Texas or Oklahoma or, Ohio State, not Oklahoma, I guess, last year, but historically, some of the best teams in the country. If you lose to some of those best teams in the country, you don't have to hang your head. And I think that there's kind of a perspective of there's a national group out there saying, well, Oregon doesn't deserve it. Well, Oregon deserves it just as much as anybody else. There was a time where Oregon kind of looked at us almost as like the West Virginia of the West. We're way past that now. Then when Chip Kelly first started, that's kind of what it was. Rich Rod was over there. Chip, we're doing kind of the same thing. Pat White, Dennis Dixon kind of a thing. We're way past that. Oregon went in the Big Ten last year and not only won in football, they won 7 other conference championships. They won 8 conference championships in their athletic program in year 1, including baseball and softball at the end of the year. That's phenomenal. And we'll take that. But the ideology is this next year, Oregon's not necessarily the number 1 team. Everybody thinks it's going to be Ohio State, the returning champion. Everybody loves Penn State because they're bringing everybody back. So, yeah, Oregon's now looked at as maybe the 2nd, 3rd best, 4th best team, whatever they want to be. That's fine by us because Oregon's going to do what Oregon does. The key thing for us is, and it's kind of like this, like if you've ever been out here, you can understand it. It's gorgeous. It's unbelievable. A lot of people who have a lot of opinions about Oregon, I live in Portland. You want to ask people nationally what their opinion of Portland, Oregon is? They've never been here. They have no idea. It's not a war zone. It's an incredible city. It's lovely. Now, my point being is that they see the same thing with Oregon football. How can you get kids to Florida, from Florida to Oregon? How can you recruit nationally? Well, Oregon has found a way. They found a way when it comes to collectives. They found a way to stay relevant when it comes to NIL. And they are not the same level of school that some of these other schools are when it comes to alumni base, when it comes to the amount of money that's being pumped into it. And people think that Oregon has some sort of unlimited budget. They don't. They're telling kids straight up, we will pay you the market offer, but we're not going to go above and beyond. But you can come here and really do some things. And I think Oregon has proven that. Look at a guy like Dylan Gabriel. Look at a guy like Bo Nix. Look at Derek Harmon last year. You think Derek Harmon goes first round coming out of Michigan State last year? No offense to Michigan State. Again, Sparty's great. And I love Jonathan Smith. I'm a big fan. But Oregon's doing stuff different out here. And you got to give them some respect. I know a lot of people don't want to do that out of the gate, but it's a fun environment. It's a cool place to be. It's a great fan base. It's unique. You can just focus on football out here. Eugene's a small town. there's a lot of things going for U of O. And I think Dan Lanning encapsulates it best by saying, hey, I'm blessed to be here. I don't want to go anywhere else. The grass is damn green in Eugene. That is a unbelievable message. And when he doubled down on staying in Eugene, it just solidified the whole program. So I'm a big believer in it.
I mean, there's so much you had to say there. I want to comment on all of
Sorry.
it, but you made so many good points. I mean, the main thing that I want to comment on is the development aspect of stuff, because I think a lot of people go after Oregon because of the transfer portal and how many players they get through there, and I get that, right? We want to try and make it seem like, oh, this team can develop and this team can't, whatever. At the end of the day, certain programs have to build certain ways because of whether it's geography, whether it's the way that they're viewed, currently now, and then they have to go to players at other times, whatever reason it is. At the end of the day, if you win, are you really going to look at a player and say, oh, well, it doesn't mean as much because they were a transfer? No, right? Max Brosmer went to Minnesota, and Minnesota fans embraced him and loved him just as they would any other quarterback that came in there and did really well for him, right? Will Howard went to Ohio State. Ohio State fans loved on him, embraced him, just like any other quarterback that would have came in there and won a national championship for him. Now, maybe it's not exactly the same, right? There is the thought of like the homegrown kid and stuff, but let's be honest, those happen fewer and further between than they ever have before. At the end of the day, like, let me just say this one thing really fast.
Yeah.
Ted, Big Ten Ted, who now covers Oregon over there at Scoop Duck, he made a fantastic point putting together that the team of Oregon this offseason has put on over 1,300 pounds together as a team. That's muscle. That's not pizza, right? Their overall peak power numbers have increased by 21%, and their average gain for freshmen is 17 pounds each. That's phenomenal. That's called development. That's called getting your guys ready in the offseason, and it's one of the reasons why Dan Lanning, I love him. I think that he runs a really good program. I love that he's in the Big Ten, and I love that he said heck no to Alabama and the SEC and decided to stay in the Big Ten because he knew it was best, number one, at Oregon, and number two, he loves the conference, the Big Ten.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we're a small state. We're 3.5 million, 4 million out here in the state of Oregon. We don't produce a lot of D1 talent. I mean, we've had two quarterbacks from the city of Eugene that came through U of O and went to the NFL. Chris Miller in the 80s, Justin Herbert right now. And, those are our guys. Those guys went to Sheldon High School. They literally are in the shadow of Eugene. Justin Herbert used to walk to the games at Autzen from his family's house. I mean, you can't get any closer than that. That's very rare. That rarely ever happens. I loved Will Howard. I thought Will Howard represented their university freaking fantastic. I thought he was a great player. He made an error in the Oregon game by trying to get an extra couple yards for his kicker, and he didn't slide early enough. If he had slid a second earlier, they probably get the kickoff and win the thing in the stadium. I was there. And so it's like you're going to fault the kid for that. And I hate to say this as well because I'm a huge Chip Kelly guy, but it felt like Chip Kelly completely took the air out of the freaking ball in the game against Michigan and didn't let Will Howard do Will Howard things and put them in a very precarious position to put them into that situation where they lost to Michigan. I felt like they didn't do what they've done the whole year. They should have aired the thing out. They should have gone to JJ. They should have gone to other sort of stuff. And I just felt like they didn't do that. And here I am watching the game. I'm a Chip Kelly fan. And I'm also a Carlos Loughlin fan. I don't know if you realize this. Also, after the Rose Bowl, after the game, I went and shook hands with Carlos Loughlin, man. Coach Lock and I are good. Like I'm on the level of like, you got to respect your opponent. I always grew up with sportsmanship. I played 3 sports all the way through. I was a captain of every team I played on. I shook the hands of the other opponent. I thought that's very important to understand that. You better tip the cap when you lose. And, the fact that Michigan beat Ohio State, that was the biggest thing that happened to Ohio State that catapulted them to the national championship. And I knew that it was going to happen. As soon as they beat Ohio State, I was like, oh, no. As soon as Oregon was going to see Ohio State in the Rose Bowl, I was like, oh, God, buckle up. It's going to get wild. So I love the fact that Dan Lanning came out right away and took accountability for that loss. Said today, hey, that fueled us in the offseason. That was, we're this close. We need to push it just that much more. We need to be that much more on it. We need to try to do what we can. And we need to be able to compete with the rest of the group. Now, let's go to NIL for a second. I remember the first year of NIL, Ryan Day said we need $13 million a year. I don't know if that's exactly the number it was, but I thought it was that Ryan Day came out the first year of NIL said, we're going to need $13 million a year to keep this thing going. That's way over the number now. What's the number now? 25, 30?
It's tripled. I mean, there's
40,
teams
50?
out here paying almost 40. Yeah.
Oh, okay. You see what I'm saying? That was year one. That was only 2 or 3 years ago. And here I am thinking, okay, well, how is Oregon going to be able to compete with this? And yet there are people who are getting mad, quote unquote, at Oregon for trying to compete. If the number is 40 million and Minnesota ponies up 40 million next year, are they being competitive? Are you gonna congratulate them for being competitive, or are you gonna try to hold it against them? How dare you spend the money that we spend? It seems crazy to me that people who, again, the haves and the have-nots, Oregon's trying to be one of the haves. Why are you holding that against Oregon? Why is that a problem? That's benefiting. I don't know if you guys realize this, but Oregon got paid half of what everybody else got paid in the Big Ten last year. I think we made our money. I think we did what we were supposed to do for the Big Ten last year. I don't know. Seems like to me we did a pretty good job. So it's like, dude, at half the rate, I think we got a pretty good return on investment. How about UCLA? Compare us to them or the Huskies. Huskies didn't win one thing. You know what they won their championship in? Rowing. The Dogs won in rowing. We won 8 championships, including football. Now, again, losing the Rose Bowl, I get it. National championship. But at the end of the day, you should be proud of Oregon if you're a Big Ten fan, because Oregon's coming into the Big Ten and doing what they're supposed to do, which is being competitive, trying our best, putting our best foot forward, spending the money we're supposed to spend on the thing, and doing what's best for the thing. And like Dan Lanning said, we're not trying to do things we're not trying to cheat. We're not trying to do things above board. We're not trying to do things backdoor. We're trying to do everything's legal now. Okay, cool. Here's our numbers. So yeah. I'm a big fan of Dan Lanning. I think he's really is a guy who it's hard to dislike. And I think him as the face of our franchise is really a unique situation. I think it really puts us in a great space. I think a lot of people didn't like Cristobal. So Dan Lanning's got a good face to our franchise. I don't think he's going anywhere, and I think it's a good fit for us.
Well, yeah, and just the program that Dan Lanning has created, right? I mean, it really shows that who was the wide receiver? Was it Tez Johnson? I mean, the dude waited the entire time after Will Howard's sideline interview after the game, when all he could talk about was the game and how amazing it was. Tez Johnson sat there the entire time, listened to it, just so that way he could show his respect to Will Howard at the end of the game after that Rose Bowl, after getting his teeth kicked in and having a terrible game. And I mean, I would want to just go back to the locker room after that and be like, man,
hey, I wanted to get back to the bus. I wanted to get back to the bus too, but exactly. I also wanted to see Coach Locke. He did a good thing at Oregon. Once a Duck, always a Duck. I've always stayed in touch with him. I've always had great communication with Coach every time. If I texted him right now, he'd text me right back. Mm-hmm. So like, it was a part of that process of saying, hey man, tip the cap. It feels better. If you've been an athlete and you've competed at the highest level you can compete at, it feels good to congratulate your opponent when they beat you. Mm-hmm. It's a part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree. And then when you get to the NIL, this is the last thing we'll say on Oregon, and then we'll move on. But you get to the NIL, I'm going to praise teams that go out and spend money on their program to try and make their program in the Big Ten better, more than I'm going to talk about teams that do well that don't spend money. Because guess what? At the end of the day, everybody's getting huge checks from this media deal, this TV deal. Go use that money for football. Go use that money for what makes money for this conference. Don't just sit back and say, oh, we're just going to put this toward our rowing school or anything. That's not a shot at Washington.
Hey, man, no.
First sport I thought of. Washington's putting money in it too. Washington fans, I'm not coming after you by any means, but
they're awesome at rowing.
My brother-in-law. I want to see investment. You're getting a bunch of money from the Big Ten. Go invest and go take down the dirty, rotten SEC. I can't stand it. I don't know if you can tell, Ryan. This hat is a anti-SEC hat. Right. Undefeated in hypothetical matchups. Yeah. They just lose more. Yeah. All right,
buddy. Guys, as soon as we went to the Big Ten,
on the shop.
Oh, I totally agree, JR. As soon as we went to the Big Ten, my number one enemy was the SEC. I was like, oh, finally, now I can be anti-SEC. And in the Pac-12, we couldn't be anti anybody. Maybe we were anti-MAC. But you know what? It is what it is. You know, go back to the idea about NIL. You know, you got to put your best foot forward. Oregon's trying their best. You know, last year they paid up to get Derek Harmon. It was a huge play. Derek Harmon benefited from coming to Oregon. Oregon benefited from having Derek Harmon. This year it's Bear Alexander. Bear Alexander coming in should be a major piece. He's wearing number 1. If you're a DL and you're wearing number 1, you better be bringing it.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's
it's
like,
yeah.
That's like quarterbacks who wear like a 30-plus number or something like that, you know?
So it's just, to me, it's like, you know, put your money where your mouth is and go spend the money if you want to spend the money. And everybody knows that offensive linemen and defensive linemen, they don't grow on trees. And so you're going to need to find some people to plug the middle. You're not finding them from Oregon. We just don't have them. Although one of the greatest defensive linemen possibly in the history of the game came from Portland, Oregon, Ndamukong Suh.
Yeah.
Ndamukong Suh, I will go down with saying, is one of the greatest of them all. He is on a very, very short list. And another Oregon Duck was Haloti Ngata, who not from Oregon, but went through Oregon, obviously. But, dude, I saw Ndamukong Suh in high school playing basketball for Grant High School, setting screens at the top of the key and rolling off the screen, JR. Imagine Ndamukong Suh said, first of all, just placing the backdoor screen. These little point guards, 6-foot point guard, have no idea what's happening behind him. A literal wall. And then he rolls off the thing and goes to the bucket.
Yeah.
So, no, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, there's more offensive linemen out here than defensive linemen, but you're going to have to go buy them on the open market if you want to be competitive, and I don't think that should be held against Oregon.
Yeah, well, and also you got to realize Terry, is it Alik Terry?
Alik
our
Terry, offensive line coach.
One of the best offensive line coaches in the country, people. I mean, he doesn't get enough
phenomenal
credit.
Individual.
Oh, I'm
just
sure.
a great person.
Yeah.
No. He does it. He does it right. And I think the other thing is that Oregon's offering guys a unique place to be themselves. The brand is about the players. And I think that's important. They're not the nameless, faceless crowd. At Oregon, you are the face of the franchise. So it's going to be a big deal this year.
Love it. Love it. Hey, we had to make sure we didn't want to put too much slander on the MAC here. You know, we had to make sure we put up Max. I'm just messing.
Love the MAC. I'm just saying, like Oregon, you know, in the Pac-12, it felt like sometimes we were more competitive against the West Coast Conference or the MAC or the WAC or anybody else, because again, the SEC hated on us so much. The Big Ten even hated on us so much, even though we were supposed to be brethren in the alliance.
Yeah, that alliance did not last.
The alliance didn't do a damn thing for us, buddy.
Oh man, but Max sticking up for the MAC there,
dude.
Go Birds. Nothing wrong with the MAC. Nothing wrong with the
Mid-American or the American Conference. I think there's great football to be played all across the country, not just in the Big Two.
I'd bring Memphis into the Big Ten. I mean, $200 million, and if it doesn't go well, they're going to kick themselves out. Sure.
So, I mean, talk about that for a second, because this whole idea about them wanting to go to the Pac-12 and the Pac-12. What is the deal? Why would the Pac-12 not want Memphis?
I don't get it.
It doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Yeah, I don't get it, man.
You want North Texas and not Memphis?
Or is it Texas State? They took
Texas State. I don't care. Yeah. One of the Texas schools I don't know existed until they came into the thing. I think Memphis is better. Derrick Rose?
Yeah.
Come on.
Well, and they got basketball too. That's the thing. Like they have a basketball program too.
School.
Yeah. So I don't get it.